This is an example of our new project, the Typography Biography project, and this is a finished project. So I just want to go through this and show you what you will be doing with this project. So if I start at the top, I'll just turn these layers off one by one. Okay, so the first thing you'll do is you're going to pick a subject. So I picked Madonna for this, and your subject can be somebody famous. It can be yourself. You can do a typography autobiography. It can be somebody you know. It could be a pet. It could be really any subject. But the main thing is that you know enough about the subject that you're able to get enough information to do this biography on them. So you'll start with the capital letter of their first name, their last name, depending on who it is. And then you're going to be filling that in with words about them. That's why it's really important that you know a lot about this person. And you're going to be adding some effects, a title, a subtitle, and more effects. We're going to be doing about 3 different effects here. And you can see they all look different. And when you're all done, you can move these effects around. You can drag them from one layer to another. Sometimes that made a slight difference. One thing I remember making a difference is when I put the subtitle under this effect 1. It looked a little bit washed out and I didn't like that, so I moved it above effect 1 and then it stood out more, and I like that better. So I could have this kind of cool look. I can turn on this gradient map 1 and that has kind of a hot glowing look. So it really just depends on how you want this to look when you're done. You will create all of the effects and turn them on and off and move them around as you wish. Now, if you want to do some extra credit for this project, you can add an image. And I did find this image as well, but I didn't like it as much, so I turned that off and just kept this image. And notice the image does have a layer mask and is removed from the background. That's going to be important if you do add an image. And you can see that with that effect turned off, with this effect turned off. Okay, so you have lots of options here. Okay, so let's get started. You're going to start a new document. And right away, let's just name this. We're going to name it last name, first name, and then we'll call this typography. You can call it typo for short, and then biography. So we can call it typo bio for short. And then we're going to have a width of 10 inches, a height of 8 inches, resolution 300. We want this to be in RGB color mode. That's important, or some of your effects won't work. And for our background contents, we're going to move off of white and go to black and say create. Okay, so once we have that done, we're going to add an adjustment layer. But before we do that, I want you to change your foreground color. So first of all, I'm going to hit default black and white, and I'm going to switch black to the bottom. I want you to check your black. When you click on that black background, when this window opens up, you should have 6 zeros here. This number right here is always 6 digits, and it's called a hex number for colors. So you should have 6 zeros. If I move this out a little bit, that looks a lot like black there, but it's not 6 zeros, so I know it's not pure black. So if I type in 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I know that I have pure black. This is going to be important for this project. This is also really important when you're working with a layer mask, because if you're not on pure black or pure white, when you're working with the layer mask, you're going to get that image not being completely blocked or completely showing. And so you're going to get some weird transparencies going on. One way to know you're always on pure black and pure white is to hit this little icon, that default black and white. Okay, so with our background color set to pure black, we're going to click on the foreground color, and I'm going to give you a hex number for your foreground, and it's 6 ones. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And that color looks an awfully lot like black, but it's not pure black. And say OK. All right, now we're going to go to our Add New Adjustment Layer icon, and we're going to go to Gradient. In this Gradient Fill window, I want you to pull down this top window, and you're going to go to the very first square. That square looks like it's black, but that square is actually your foreground color to your background color. So we have that really dark gray going to black. We're going to change the style to radial. And for now, we'll leave the angle at 90 and the scale to 100%. Later on, when you have these effects going on, if you want to go back into this window and play around with that angle and scale, you may be able to increase or decrease those effects. But that's up to you, but I'm just leaving this on default for now. You want to make sure that reverse is on, keep dither off, and align with layer stays on, and say OK. So you should be able to see a slight gradient happening here from the center out to the outside. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our big capital letter. And before we do that, I want you, so you're going to go to your type tool, so activate that. Go up to the tools option panel, and we want to change your type color. And I'm going to give you a hex number for a nice blue that you can use. So, and that number is 6DCFF6. Now I'm going to use a font that I've already looked at, and that font is called Verdana. And I'm going to go to that. So right here, Verdana, and the one that I'm using is Verdana Bold. I'm going to right now just set my font size to 250 point just to start with. And then I'm going to come down, click on my page, holding Shift, I'm going to type in a capital M for Madonna. Okay, so the reason this font works really well with this project is because it's nice and bold, it's a sans serif, and it doesn't have any curves, so it's nice, straight, clean lines. There are other fonts that work just as well for this. And one way you can look through the fonts, if you don't like Verdana, you can highlight your letter, go up to the font style window, and I'm going to start on this first font here, highlight this window, and if I hit my down arrow, it will take me through a lot of different fonts here. So this one is Dido. This is not a good font to use for this because it has serifs, first of all, and it has thick lines and thin lines. And that is going to be really difficult to get words in there that are easily recognizable and easy to read. So these are things to think about. Here's another really popular serif font, and that is Times New Roman. And this one would not be a good choice. So anything with serifs you really should stay away from. Arial Black is a great font for this. So you should look at Arial Black with whatever letter you have and see if you like that one. And I'm just going to go through a couple more here. Okay, this one has nice clean lines, but it's really curvy, and since I have an M, I can avoid those curves. Some letters are really hard to avoid curves on, like the letter S. But if you want to use the letter S, it is doable, and I will show you some examples of letters that have curves. But this one, I think I can avoid that, and this one is a little bit too thin anyway. This one would be out of the question. I think by the time you were done, we wouldn't even recognize that. This one's not a good choice. This one's a little too thin. This one, this is a nice shape for a letter M, but it would be hard to get the words in there and keep this nice shape because you do have some curves in here. The same with this one. It does have some slight curves, and I think you would lose that effect after you filled this in with words. This one would be not a good choice. This one's too thin. So I think you guys are getting the idea. Here's Arial Black again, which is another good choice. So look through these and pick the one that you want. I am going to go with Verdana Bold. Okay, now I started with 250 point, as you remember, but I want to make this larger. So I'm just going to do a transformation, just like if it were an image. So Command T. And just like if it were an image, I need to make sure that I'm only enlarging this or decreasing the size from one of these four corners. And I need to hold Shift. If I don't do that, then I will distort this letter and it will lose its nice shape. So I'm going to let go of the Shift key for a second so you can see how then I can free transform and distort this, and that just doesn't look so good. So I'm going to hold Shift and it's going to force me back to keeping this thing in proportion. And I want to make this fairly large on my page, keeping in mind that I will have a title and a subtitle down on the bottom right. And if I want to do extra credit, I may need to leave some space for that. So it does not need to be center. You could be off center. This might take a little bit of forethought and planning, but I would go a little bit higher to the top so that we have room for the title down below. And I'm going to go a little bit to the right because I know that I want the placement of my image on the left. And then I'm going to accept. And then I want to do one more thing today before I save and close out, and that is I'm going to change the opacity of this big M. And I'm going to change it down to about 20%. I want to be able to still see the M, but I want it dimmed down quite a bit because I'm going to be typing all of those words on top of this in the color white. And so that will allow me to really see my text and be able to place it on this thing without having it hang over or having lots of gaps in it. So 20% will work really well with that. And then I'm going to file Save As because it's the first time I'm saving. I want to navigate to my folder. And I have already started a typography bio folder and save. That's it for today. Please let me know if you have any questions.